Well, welcome back. You are checking out Curiosity, Not Judgment, and my name is Birga.
And I'm Gary.
So, we spent a few weeks talking about artificial intelligence, and we want to pivot a little bit today to transition into some conversation about automation, customer service, and some of the other maybe subcategories under computerized help and care. And we have been experiencing a shift, I would say a pretty dramatic shift since COVID, in how we are cared for in every arena from the medical office to the supermarket to phone trees, and wanted to address that a little bit more thoroughly today because I think it really matters how we are doing business with one another. If you happen to be a business owner and can make decisions on behalf of your customer service facing employees or computers, this is certainly a conversation you want to be curious about. But if you're stuck in the world of frustration about customer service and where things are, maybe we can together be curious about what our role is in a changing world of front-facing customer service.
Why is it that I get so frustrated with phone trees and a seemingly lowering of customer service, especially noticeable since COVID? Why is it that I get so upset about such a seemingly silly thing? I mean, these are first world problems, as you know,
Certainly.
right? I mean, this is. I'm not trying to call somebody and get in touch with them to solve world hunger.
Right.
I need what I need, or I am dealing with a doctor's office, or checking out groceries at my local grocery store. What is it about customer service that seems so digital? I mean, we hear about people getting upset on airplanes. We hear about people getting upset
Everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah.
And how much of that is just the current environment we live in, et cetera, and how much of that are we doing to ourselves by the way we treat each other, including the customer experience?
Yeah. Oh, this could be an hours long conversation, but I'm going to back up to something before my time and ask you if you've had any experience with the era in which you would go up to a gas station and someone would pump the gas for you.
Of course. I'll never forget my mother had a great joke. My dad's name was Phil.
Okay.
And she'd come up to a gas station every once in a while. This may be where I get my sense of humor. And she would say, "Hey, where's my free mug with Philip?" And what gas stations back then would do is they would give little promotions if you would come by there. And you had these tidy people in uniforms that would run out to the car and fill up your car for you. By the way, you can still get that today in Brazil.
Interesting.
The entire country. You're not allowed to have self-service gas stations.
Oh.
And if I'm not wrong, I believe the state of Oregon. I mean, there are certain states in the United States that still don't allow you
I did not know
to
that.
do we don't know if we can make conjectures, we can ask, we can be curious.
Sure.
Is that for workforce development and job creation or job preservation? Is it for safety? Many people say it's because of safety issues. I think Japan is the same. I'm not sure. I think you can't do self-serve. I think I remember when I was in Japan that. So I think there's many places where that's still the case.
So, do you have any idea, this is my curiosity, why that shifted? What was it that caused that era to come to an end and everyone to have to pump their own gas?
I can conjecture. I know that for a while it was both. You had the full service lanes and the self-service lanes. And the self-service lanes were a little cheaper because obviously they didn't have to pay a gas station attendant.
Sure.
I would also say that part of the gas station attendant's job back then was not just to fill your tank. While your tank was filling, they would wash your windshield, they would check your fluids, which I am from the era where you needed to do that much more frequently than we do now. As a matter of fact, I try to train my kids to watch their fluid levels, and they're like, why? Right? I've got an indicator that tells me if a tire's low, let alone, my radiator fluid. I don't even know, what is that?
Right.
I mean, but that used to be a thing.
Sure.
I've driven cars when I was young that you had to check your radiator fluid and your oil fluid frequently, or you could get in some serious trouble. And so, because you don't want the oil light to come on.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, it was more than just filling your tank. And I think it was a level of service of, hey, you can sit in your car and have the luxury of somebody else doing that work with and for you. And so I think that that was a true next level customer service that has gone away.
Is it a safe assumption to say both business owners and potentially customers wanted to save money and that maybe forced that pattern of service out?
Certainly, if you're going to save a couple of pennies a gallon and one service station starts doing it, if you're in a competitive marketplace, you probably need to start offering it. And I would say that that's true. And I think that many of the, how do I say this properly? Many of the ways that we see the level of customer service diminishing is due to cost savings.
Right.
Less employees, less pay, more automation. And that is a way to lower the cost of goods in the competitive market.
Well, skipping ahead to COVID, I was thinking prior to this, as I was trying to do a little prep thinking over this topic, did COVID lend itself to reducing people in checkout lines, employed by the agency, the organization, the grocery store, the whatever? Did COVID tend to do away with that in lieu of people scanning their own things so that there was less human contact? And I thought it would be a given, like, well, for sure that's what happened. But as I'm going back kind of through the months in my mind, I remember there being a rallying cry actually around the supermarket checkers and baggers being the heroes that were needing to be considered essential workers. They were in the grocery stores. They were the critical people that helped us get our needed goods. And I don't think this, at least in our community, we live in the biggest city in New Mexico, we're in Albuquerque. Here in Albuquerque, it was really post-COVID, the intensity of COVID, when I think all the automation just ramped up gangbusters. And so I can't necessarily attribute this to a health concern, but something shifted.
I like to think about COVID in that it was like pouring Miracle Grow on a few things. I think mental health issues being chief among them. But I think it also poured Miracle Grow on the ability to automate. And I think it did cause worker shortages.
Yes.
People who did not want to come to work or didn't have to come to work. And that's for sure. And if you don't have workers, you have to figure out a way to serve your customers, and automation is a way to do that, including self-checkout lines in this case. Who knows? This is one of those things where you can't attribute 100% of it to COVID.
Right.
But it's not zero.
Right.
So, what percentage of this happened? Was it going to happen eventually anyway, but it would have been 10 years from now instead of now?
Perhaps.
I think that's the discussion that you could have. But I think that, I know that in my world, I put up with in some cases, a drastic decrease in customer service. Less people answering the phones, more computers, less people at the counters when you're looking to get goods and services, and just an expectation that you will put up with waiting. And so I think that that's become part of status quo that was not there before COVID.
Well, I want to go back to a question that you asked a few minutes ago about why does it get you so upset? I think I have a very similar experience, or I've had a very similar experience over the last couple of days. And my response to that question is because I feel like I am not seen, I am not valued, and that I just don't matter. And even in a very simple example, I pulled up to get some air in my tires at a well-known chain that advertised free air pressure check. I waited at the designated spot. I had no fewer than 8 employees look me directly in the eye, ignore me, and walk away. And after 12, 15 minutes of sitting there with my car idling, I couldn't wait any longer, and I drove away really frustrated and borderline angry.
Well, just today, I was in a coffee shop and went up to go get a simple, cup of tea and an ice water. And stood there for, you know, 5 to 7 minutes, seemed like an eternity until someone would acknowledge me and come up and talk to me. And I was flabbergasted, actually, like, really, you don't want my money? And I want to be careful here, but it seems like there is a change, a shift in attitude,
Yes, I agree.
even among the workforce, that, hey, I'm here to do a job, collect my paycheck, they don't pay me enough. And, customer service, I mean, that's above and beyond what I'm looking for. Now, again, as very famous people in the manufacturing world used to say in the quality movement and other things, is that, employees do, their actions are a reflection of the environment in which they work. So I'm not blaming them, but I think something has shifted where it's absolutely okay now to not drop what you're doing and go serve someone. These are two individual data points. Of course, we can't extrapolate to a line, but I think it's a common experience that we now see that people are less likely to drop what they're doing and come serve you and just
Yeah.
keep on doing what they're doing.
Well, and part of me is curious, was the behavior of the customers during COVID so horrific that the people providing customer care in all fields think to themselves, this job isn't worth this paycheck. I don't want to have to put up with these people, whether it be fights over toilet paper in the checkout line, or demanding things be done a certain way, heightened sensitivity because everyone's walking in fear and uncertainty. And then especially
Becoming the mask police.
yeah. And then, yeah, especially in the medical community, right? And as the government mandate went on much longer than the general public for mask wearing, oh my goodness, have I heard just the rudest people walk into a doctor's office without a mask. They're respectfully asked to mask up, and then the tirade is unleashed on the person at the front desk.
So I think you're right. That is part of it. And I think that in general, people have gotten less tolerant and less enjoying of the human interaction. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's part of the, look, I get my human interaction via cell phone or iPad, and I don't have a big desire to interact with human beings in a customer setting. That could be a part of it.
Well, I think my follow-up question would be, have we become so accustomed to online transactions where we disassociate the person behind the screen that when we're actually face to face, we have almost that lapse in judgment because we've now trained ourselves that the person on the other end of the screen, oh, they're not really going to be hurt by what I say, or I can launch this tirade their direction and they're not going to be able to do anything. Have we hidden behind a screen so long that it's impacted our face-to-face interactions?
Possibly, and I think I mean, I met sometimes with surprise. You know, during COVID, I was very appreciative of a waiter or waitress that was at a restaurant serving me, and I over-tipped, and I was very gracious and would literally say, "Thank you for serving us today. I really appreciate you being here for us."
Yeah.
And sometimes I would get these looks like, what are you saying to me? I don't even understand that. So maybe that's an indication that it was more the exception rather than the rule, and maybe we are training the very people that we want great customer service from not to give it to us.
I hope that we all take the time to really acknowledge superior care and superior service, because I think that really does a lot for the person who's providing the care, but it also helps us to recognize just we're interacting with somebody who has a job where they're engaging with the public in a service-oriented manner, and most people just completely dismiss them. And you and I were at a conference last week, and I don't know if I even told you the story. I was at our booth, and it was almost the end of the lunch service, and nobody was there to cover my shift, and I was pretty hungry. And one of the gals that worked at the hotel walked by, and she saw me, and she was like, "Well, you better go get some lunch." I was like, I can't leave. There's nobody here." She goes, "Well, do you want me to make you a plate?" And at first I wanted to say, "No, don't worry about it," because I was, kind of feeling awkward about it. But then I was like, "Yes, I would love that." And she did, and I was so thankful. And I made it a point to go find her supervisor and to say as much
Yeah.
because it was the next level of care.
Yeah. And I did the same. I went and found her and her supervisor. After you told me the story, I'd forgotten about that. But yeah, and hopefully we don't come to a point in this world where that is the exception rather than the rule. And we do need to call out. And I often go find the manager after a good experience, even a good experience in a restaurant, especially these days. And I think you're right. I think we have a responsibility to call it out. I think that we have a responsibility to put down our phone and talk to people
Yes.
in the cash register line.
Yes.
We've talked about that before. And I think we have an opportunity to be friendly no matter what the situation too. And Andrea and I, my wife and I, all the time have a little saying that we say to each other whenever we're stuck in an airport, canceled flights, delayed flights, which happens to everybody a lot these days. And we just say when we're on the way up to the counter, "Okay, smile," because obviously that person may be part of the problem, but the chances are they're a very small part or zero of the problem. They're just the representative of the
Right.
problem.
The front facing.
The front facing. And we try to be, and Andrea's particularly good at this. "Oh, love your nails, love your," and I'm admittedly a little less prone to do that. But I mean, I try to, and I always compliment good service. And I always try to smile, especially for the first, and even if things get bad,
Yeah.
I don't get mad and start pounding the desk. I just point out, certain things objectively and say, "Well, are you telling me this? Are we really saying that this is the case? There's really no flights out tonight," right? And so, and it's funny because sometimes just staying in the conversation in a friendly, objective manner, even if it gets what could be termed tense, I can't tell you the amount of times it's like, "Yeah, you know what? Maybe we could do this," and it turns out okay. That got me a flight from Nashville to Charleston to Myrtle Beach, where there was no way to get to Myrtle Beach in a recent situation, and so. We owe some responsibility, I think is the key
As
to
consumers.
what you're saying as consumers.
Yeah.
And I do think that we should approach it in a friendly, interactive manner, human to human.
Yes.
And we should acknowledge when we receive that back.
Absolutely. So what if you're not dealing human to human? What if you're dealing human to machine, as is the case in many grocery stores nowadays? You roll up with your cart, you scan the aisles, there's no living person there, and so you have to go check yourself out.
Yeah. So I've gotten used to that, but I go to a grocery store here that's a walk, and we sometimes do walk to the grocery store, which is a lot of fun. But when we're checking out, I sometimes see the situation where there is no cashiers. Self-checkout is your only option. And I see some folks, not to generalize, but often they're elderly, who just have no interest in dealing with a machine, especially weighing their own fruit or vegetables, figuring out how to do that on a machine. And if you don't place the thing in the thing properly before you do your next one,
Right.
it tells you have to call an attendant. It can be very frustrating
Yes, it
if you
can.
don't know what you're doing. And
Even if you know what you're
even
doing.
if you know what you're doing, and so that's a tough one. That one, I'm getting through and I'm getting used to it, right? Pumping my own gas, so to speak. I think it's funny because I haven't noticed a decrease in prices as a result.
No, if anything, prices are going up.
So that's a whole nother subject. But one of the things that makes me upset about automation is I'm imagining this room full of people around a whiteboard trying to think up ways to answer all of your questions on a phone tree before you can get to a representative. And in my case, I don't know about yours, they are 100% wrong all the time. If I had any of the issues that they say in the phone tree, and then they always end with, "and you could do this more efficiently online," I'm in my car.
Right.
I'm trying to deal with a canceled flight or a bad rental situation or something. I'm not at a computer.
Right.
Everybody just assumes you're at a computer, right? So, but as you go through the phone tree, I start saying representative. Well, if you'll just tell me a few more things, I can get you to the right representative. I've never ever stopped and said, "Oh, that's exactly the information I need.
Right.
Play me your little automated tape and I'll be happy."
Right.
It's never happened.
Yeah.
And yet I'm dealing with that every time. And so, and I tell you, the places where I am finding myself gravitating to do business are the ones that don't put me through that.
Interesting.
It's
Well,
worth a lot to me in my time.
yeah, I get it. I absolutely get it. But so I guess what is the curious question around our increasingly automated society in which we have to do business? And when we're up against man versus machine, and the machine seems to be winning intellectually and because it can keep a cool head and we can't, how do we approach that in a manner that we save ourselves anger, frustration, heartache? Because I don't know that this is going to get any better with time.
No. And so we have already talked about what we own, and part of what we own is not getting frustrated and setting aside some time to do this. One of the issues I personally have is I have very little margin in my life, and so when I sit down to try to resolve a problem with a medical bill or an appointment or something like this, you know, I probably only give myself a couple of minutes between meetings, and of course I'm going to be frustrated because
Right.
it's taking way longer than it should. So I suppose allotting the proper amount of time, and then being nice and not getting frustrated, keeping my own stress level down, is my responsibility. I guess the curious question for me is, do are we going to see a swing back? Are we going to get so automated that anytime someone says, "You know what, I've got an idea, I'm going to do a business where there's no automation," and everybody flocks to them, maybe we see
See a new trend?
a trend back? Or are we just going to are we ratcheted, which I am assuming is the case right now, into a phone tree world?
I don't know. That would be the moneymaker's dream, right? If you could forecast, are we going to go back into a customer service era where things pivot the other way? And if so, I better go save some money to open up a boutique right quick. But certainly the way that things look from this vantage point right now is that we're going to get deeper and deeper into the automation world. And I think what you said really resonates, that if we are not creating enough margin to deal with the automation aspects of our life, everything from checking ourselves out at the grocery store to dealing with a phone tree with your airline or your medical provider, I guess it's on us because we don't have the power to force the ability to speak to a live person who's going to meet our needs. And so we have to turn the mirror back around and say, okay, what is my role and my responsibility in this? Because this is bringing me a great deal of frustration and unhappiness.
Is it worth elevated cortisone levels and damage to our bodies to get stressed out about the lack of customer service? Especially if we're in a situation where we're just not going to have the ability to switch the people that we depend on for our food and our gas and our essentials. And so I guess that's the key, is just coming to an agreement with ourselves that we're not going to be stressed, and we're going to be purveyors of peace in the world as opposed to sadists of stress, right, or whatever the words are. And how can we make the world better given the fact that we are going to live in a world of automation here on out?
I have a business idea for you.
Okay.
Okay, so you can have a company of people who can be hired out by the hour to wait through the phone tree. So you call, you tell me their problem, like, I need to switch this flight, I need to find this lost item, I need to make this appointment, give them the basics. They can go through the phone tree, and then 45 minutes later, when it's time to connect to the real person, they connect you.
Yeah, and there are a whole world of virtual assistants,
Yeah,
and
that's true too.
I think that we're going to start seeing a trend where more and more people do that.
Yeah. All right, so as always, curious your thoughts on the topic. What do you think? What is our role in this increasingly automated world of customer service? And if you're a business owner and you have some front-facing customer service aspect to your company, what are you doing? Are you keeping live people or are you automating? Would love to hear some of the things going on with you. So please do check out the opportunity to connect with us at curiositynotjudgment.com, or of course you can leave a comment on any of the platforms where you are watching or hearing this. As always, appreciate your time.
Take care.